Real quick before we jump into the video, guys, for the rest of this year I'm going to be on a fundraising campaign to raise a minimum of £1,000 for the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. For more information on the charity and what it does, and for the donation links, please look in the description below. And thank you all for your continued support. Enjoy the show. What's going on, guys? Ribombees teacher in the house, and I'm here with the Ribombees RBL post-season kind of roundup, I guess. I like to do these videos at the end just to kind of talk about how the season went for me and stuff like that, and kind of things that I would want to improve on for next season. Because even though, yes, I did make the final, and yes, unfortunately, I lost to Ben's Awesome, which was not too much of a surprise to me, I'll be honest. There's always things that we can take positive-wise and negative-wise away from a season, and these videos are kind of nice. It's a good way for me to kind of not only just indulge myself in a way, but also to kind of sit down with you guys and talk about how I go about my, like, evaluations and things like that. Because I think it's very important to look things up and kind of think about where you can make some changes. Especially for me playing this league, because VGC is not a format I'm particularly familiar with. I've played a lot more of it this gen than I have any other gen, but even then I'm still fairly new to the format, so there's still a lot of things that I don't necessarily know, which is kind of what really informed this draft. You can see the team I ended up with on the end. I did at one point have a Haxorus instead of Sableye, and Krokorok instead of Drakloak, but aside from that, my team's pretty much as I drafted it initially. So, coming in on partway through a season is always difficult, because I have a bit of a tendency when I do pick up a team, as I like to kind of keep some of the components of the previous coach's team and then try and play around that. So Don did have a Zeraora, a Cinderace, and Togetic was on the team, but we changed up the rest of it, largely due to the fact that he did have Registeel, which is not a bad steel type at all, but I like Ferrothorn a lot. So I replaced that, of course. He had a couple of decent Pokemon on this team that actually would have had a place in other teams I drafted. But my goal with this draft, really, or this season, particularly with the RBL, was to kind of see what combinations I've used on ladder can do in a draft league. Most notably the Galarian Weezing Regigigas combo. That's a duo that I really like using on ladder. I've been Master Ball the last couple of seasons with a team involving it. So it's definitely a very comfortable duo for me, so picking that up in draft definitely felt pretty good. Pairing that up, of course, with Zeraora, which is a really fast offensive threat, giving me things like the Urshifu Rapid Strike G-Max. Surprisingly, Single Strike was banned in this league, not really sure why. Single Strike's actually worse than Rapid Strike in VGC, in my opinion, but it is still a very, very strong Pokemon, so I wasn't too surprised. Cinderace, honestly, was a nice addition to have, because it gave me the pace. Adding Weavile to my team also added a lot of pace as well, and bringing Drakloak in a little bit later on with that 102 speed, which basically means I have a Shifu 97 speed, Regigigas 100, Drakloak 102, Cinderace 119, Weavile 125, and Zeraora 143 base speeds, which means that my team's incredibly fast. Which is really fun to play with, because fast teams can be very hard to deal with, because they either force a Choice Scarf option or force Trick Room. Trick Room is a major weakness for this team, which is why Ben's matchup into me was just ridiculously strong. Trick Room is actually one of the biggest threats to my team in general, because fast teams really struggle against Trick Room teams, because obviously their speed is a disadvantage under Trick Room. One glaring hole I noticed with this draft is that I don't really have super dedicated special attackers. Like, yes, Colossal can be special, but it's actually just perfectly fine physical. The only reason why a lot of people run Colossal Special in VGC especially is its move pool is better on the special side. Zeraora, of course, can run special, but it actually has a pretty lackluster special move pool. I've heard Raikustik talk about it a few times, that Zeraora is probably going to get banned in the RBL next season. I'm just going to say this now, Raikustik, if you're watching this, I don't agree with that decision. Zeraora is not ban-worthy, in my opinion. It's definitely strong, for sure. It's a pretty good Dragapult check, for example. Obviously, it's got pace, but things like Pheromosa outpace it. and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think banning Zeraora takes away a lot of the power. Well, it takes away a lot of good answers on the board, and it leaves things like Dragapult, which in my opinion is a lot more ban-worthy in a Draft League format for VGC. It leaves Dragapult even stronger, and I'm not sure I particularly agree with that change, unless you unban Urshifu Single Strike. And even then, like, that's one of the answers to Dragapult. There's a few answers, but not many, so that's something to just consider in mind. But yeah, this team, very physically offensive orientated, which also makes it weak to Intimidators like Incineroar, which Ben used very well against me. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. But I think aside from that, like, balance-wise between offense and defense, I think I have a very, very solid team here. You know, Sableye, Togetic, Dracloak, Ferrothorn, Galarian, Weezing are all very solid support Pokemon. Even Weavile with Surf can technically function as a support one, but yeah, very, very solid defensive mons in general. Ferrothorn's a classic for VGC and singles format. It's just such a nice bulky Pokemon to use and play around with. I don't really use Togetic or Dracloak all that much. I had planned to meme with them on Hermes, but unfortunately Hermes' team died too fast, so I couldn't really do that. But yeah, in general, draft kind of thoughts. I need to look better into VGC special attackers, because I don't know too many of them. I didn't draft them. I almost drafted Blacephalon over Zeraora, so I could run with Blacephalon Colossal, which is another duo I've been fairly familiar with. Because Zeraora is banned in VGC, it's not legal. It was kind of nice to have the option to just try it out and see how it feels. It doesn't feel that strong to me. It's definitely useful. The versatility of it can be a strength, but the fact that its move pool is almost entirely physical is a bit of a bind. So yeah, it definitely sucks in some instances. But yeah, I think it's one of those Pokemon that when it's piloted properly, it's very good, but when it's not, it's decidedly average. So that's kind of my thoughts on my draft. I do need to learn how to get some better special attackers on this team. So let's go through the season battle by battle, and we'll even look at the teams that I brought, because a lot of this was kind of interesting to think about. So my first match was up against Huggy Bear Gaming back in week 3. It feels like forever ago I played that match now. We built a pretty interesting team. For this match, of course, we did bring the Weezing Regigigas, which everybody was scared of as soon as I drafted it. Everybody was like, oh god, this thing's just going to destroy everybody. So I brought it largely to bluff leading with it, because I think a lot of people expected me to lead it, especially surface level. I know a lot of people were talking about it as a very scary duo. But ultimately, the rest of my team really came in clutch. But I think the big MVP of this match is definitely the Zeraora packing the Snarl, as combining that with the Assault Vest just did a lot of work. And the reason for that is Huggy Bear bought Hydreigon, Lapras, Meowstic, Xurkitree, Tapu Koko, and Gardevoir. Now, Tapu Koko can be physical, Hydreigon can also be physical, but neither of them were. So he basically bought an entire team of special attackers against Snarl, which was really, really interesting to me. So being able to run this set definitely makes things very interesting, and this kind of sparked the conversation of just how good Zeraora is. This was largely the fact that it was played into a team that was probably not super well prepared. We took a comfortable 2-0 win that game, and I think that was very much deserved. And it definitely made a statement going into the game. I do want to give an honorable mention to Cinderace picking up 2 kills. I was pretty comfortably on the Koko and the Gardevoir, so that was kind of cool. And we got a decent usage out of our Shifu, particularly in Game 1. Game 2, it wasn't as good, but we did get enough usage out of it to kill his Lapras while it was maxed in Resonance, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, definitely the star of the show was Zeraora in that game, for sure. Next up, we faced Rotten Tomato. This was a pretty interesting game. I had issues with timer, so I accidentally bought Weezing Regigigas in Game 1, which was not what I planned to bring, so that was entirely my fault for that one. Rotten also had very good prep with his Haunter and Salamence, max air streaming and stuff like that, so very good prep on his end. I also took an unnecessary risk making this thing adamant when I should have just made it jolly to speed tie to Salamence, which meant that the max Hailstorm had the potential to go off before the max Airstream from the Salamence, but I didn't do that, so that was a mistake of prep on my part. Definitely something I need to be a lot more careful of. I made the decision to make this Adamant, even though I know I should have made this Jolly, so that was stupid on my end. I thought I could play around it, and it turns out in game 1 I couldn't, because I got 4 out, so yeah. But then after that, Rotten really, like, his entire game plan functioned on stopping Wheezing Regigigas, but didn't really have an answer for the big carry of this team, which was this Colossal set. Now, the weakness policy Colossal is very, very commonplace, particularly when you pair it up with Weavile, because Weavile has a very, very low special attack stat when it has no IVs and you are a minus special attack nature. So, running that with the Surf mitigates the fact that Colossal is actually quad weak to water, so it's definitely problematic. It's definitely something to consider, but the fact that it did so little damage, when it maxed it only did about 15%, which still feels like a lot, to be honest with you, but it actually gives it enough so that when this max, these max flares, these max quakes, and of course the max overgrowth, which came to the fore in game 3 when he tried to bring some kind of weird physical Gastrodon against me. Not quite sure what the thought process behind that was, but it was kind of funny to try and watch him Trick Room physical sweep with a Gastrodon. It didn't quite work out. And of course, we do have the Rotten infamous line of, "That Weavile no Surf!" I can't do his accent, so I'm not even going to try, but like, you know, it was definitely pretty funny. This definitely raised alarm bells with the rest of the league. A lot of people, including Raikustin, were talking about how threatening this duo actually is. Because at the time, nobody expected this, including Rotten. Because I just remember watching Rotten's side of the battle and was laughing to myself that we had, that he was so confused why I led Weavile Colossal. Then he saw the Surf and he just got completely bamboozled. It was pretty funny. That was the second week in a row he lost to a Colossal as well. Because Raikustin had G-Max Colossal on his team, so that was kind of funny. So we do end up taking that match 2-1. He didn't have a good Colossal answer. Obviously, the timer was my fault in game 1. So obviously, I would never bring Wheezing Regigigas or Shifu Ferrothorn to that game. As it turned out in that one, we actually ended up bringing all 6 Pokemon because I picked the wrong format by mistake. Next up came the interesting match. So we currently ended up 2-2. We ended up having to come against Sayanbush Senior, who was actually undefeated at that point. He was 4-0. So this was definitely a very interesting match. And this one kind of was a bit of a holdback game, I guess you could say, because this probably wasn't the best 6 I could have brought to this game. I definitely felt like I could have had the option to bring Cinderace here instead of Colossal, so I didn't really have to rely on the setup. But largely the reason I didn't opt for Cinderace is because I felt like he would have had a fairly solid answer with the Tapu Fini. So I was kind of like, I don't really want to rely on missing Gunk Shots, because Gunk Shot's like the only move it gets that hits Tapu Fini except for Electro Ball, but I'm obviously not going to run Special, so that was definitely something to consider. He ended up bringing a team I didn't expect, because he actually brought Butterfree and Liepard over Zapdos and potential Noivern. Although Noivern did have a rusty matchup, so Liepard did make sense. I didn't really think it was going to come. But yeah, this game was definitely an interesting one. My game plan in game 1, I could have actually won game 1 had I clicked Surging Strikes on the correct mon. Unfortunately, I targeted the Blaziken instead of the buffed up Lando, which was my own fault. If I killed the Lando there instead of the Blaziken, yes, the Blaziken would outspeed me, but I don't think it kills me with anything. And then I just clicked Surging Strikes and I would have won the game. So I think I misplayed game 1, which didn't do me any favors. But in game 2, he messed up and then kind of rage quit. And then game 3, I got a pretty fortunate poison on his Liepard switching, but he kind of saw my play coming. He already knew what was happening. But this was kind of an interesting game because in this game, I completely abandoned my original plan. Because my original plan was kind of to slow down the Blaziken by running Weezing, and then just stop the Zapdos speed boosting with Haze. Now, that ended up not needing to happen because, 1, he didn't bring the Zapdos, and 2, my potential max target, which was the Zeraora or the Urshifu, was not going to work. But one max that did turn out to be very effective for us was the Weavile. Now, Obviously, I was running Icicle Crash at this point because I was too scared of running Triple Axel. But I actually realized after this match that Triple Axel was cool. The Feint Tech was pretty fun. The idea of stopping him protecting the Blaziken to prevent the free speed boost was kind of fun. Definitely a nice little option. It ended up not really working out too much, but it was a fun little tech to bring nonetheless. But yeah, definitely a very strong set, and it definitely did do a lot of work carrying us the game. Of course, we ended up taking a clean 2-1 victory after all that, because he did make some pretty bad plays and some poor switches and stuff like that during the game. He definitely rage quit, didn't play particularly well. But yeah. And next up comes week 6, which was our first encounter with Ben Zossam. Ben, of course, very, very strong player. He was, I think, #1 seed at the time, because, of course, Saiyan losing to me bumped Saiyan down the rankings and put Ben further up. And this match, I knew going into it, was a really, really terrible match for me, because Ben not only is, in my opinion, the only player in the league that rivals me mechanically, but is also a favorable matchup into me. Like, he has a Trick Room team, which my team does not like. I have a 143 speed, a 97 speed, and a 125 speed mon on my team, right? So I really didn't have a good answer to a lot of his mons. So that was something I had to consider when I was going into this build. Now, he did bring his Trick Room squad. He bought Rillaboom, Incin, Aerodactyl, Garchomp, Oranguru, Machamp. So what was interesting about this is originally his plan was to run Tailwind Aerodactyl with Focus Sash and try and get Garchomp to carry, because obviously Max Quake, Max Wormwind, stuff like that is actually very annoying. Gets Max Rockfall and Max Flare as well with Stone Edge or Fire Fang. And then, of course, he just runs Protect if he needs it. So it was definitely a very annoying duo. But we kind of debunked it pretty quickly with our Scarf Shifu. With the Surgeon Strikes just one-shot it quite comfortably. And then we did get unfortunate with our Sableye, because Sableye, as good as it was in some instances, excuse me, failing to burn the Rillaboom in the game 1 definitely sucked. It definitely lost us game 1, but I also didn't play the end game very well. So that was also a mistake on my end. Game 2, we definitely pulled it back in. We got a lot of value out of our Weezing. We actually ended up taunting the Oranguru late game, which set up for a Shifu to clean up, which was nice. And then game 3, I collapsed. Game 3, I really did not play very well. You know, I aggressively maxed my Weavile for no reason. There was no excuse for me doing that, because I knew he was going to adapt to the Sableye Weavile lead. So yeah, that was a bad play on my end, and that really set me behind. And because of that, I really did just collapse and lose the game. But at this point, I was not too worried, because I'd already had 3 back-to-back wins before this. So, like, obviously losing a matchup that was out of my favor, you know, and losing it 2-1 was not really a shame for me. So, I go into my next match with Rhycoustic. Again, at this point, a match doesn't really matter, because both of us are pretty much locked in playoffs. The only real thing that comes out of this match is whether Rhycoustic gets 2nd seed or not. Obviously, if he beats me, then he's in a pretty good chance for it, because Saiyan actually lost his Week 7 match. So, it definitely made the series a lot more interesting. But yeah, so he brings Spectria, Dragapult, Fletchinder, Pikachu, Togekiss, and Thundurus. A pretty interesting team. Obviously, I brought a bunch of memes just messing around with Rhycoustic, memeing with the names and all stuff like that, which was pretty fun. He was still pretty mad at me if you've watched his Move It Along podcast, which was kind of funny. Obviously, I murdered his rat every time. Pikachu just did not get a chance to do anything, which was pretty funny. But yeah. At the end of the day, this game didn't really matter. I didn't put a lot of time into prepping this team, other than just putting them together and gelling them in. So, yeah. Didn't really put a lot of time into it. He did play pretty well in Game 3, and I didn't really care. I was just, like, autopiloting, not really thinking about my moves. So, that's a stupid thing to do. Don't ever do that if you actually want to win your games. Like, this is not a match you want to watch if you want to see a try-hard game. Because, yeah, this is not a good example of this. But honestly, at this point, I was pretty much locked into playoffs, so I had no reason to really show my hand. And there were a couple of things that I would have wanted to hide from Rhycoustic if I faced him again in playoffs. So, yeah. That match didn't necessarily do much for us, but it was fine. Now, next up comes Hermes in Week 8. It's the last week of the regular season, and pretty much the only thing that matters in this series was that I won 1 out of the best of 3, and then that meant that I was guaranteed 5th seed because Rotten got 2-0'd by Rykoustik in Week 8. So, this was a fun game. Honestly, this was kind of fun to just, like, give Drakloak a game because I had not really used it all season, and obviously give Togetic a game, which did see a game on this team this season, but Don brought it in Week 2 against Matt Flame. So, yeah, I didn't really get much of a chance to use it either, which was a little bit unfortunate. Obviously, I brought some meme stuff, you know, Hustle, Life Orb, Adamant, Max Attack, Togetic is not really something you should ever run. Not gonna lie to you guys, but it was pretty funny, so I thought I'd try and run it. Never got to use it because, unfortunately, my special Cinderace, my Zero Aura, and my Colossal kind of did too much work. So, yeah, that was a thing. But, yeah, this was a pretty sad game in a way. But this was a game that very much was an experience gap. Like, Hermes had never played competitive before. And throughout the game, the only person he beat the whole season was the guy I took over from. So, yeah, definitely not a game for him. But it was a fun game for me nonetheless. It was nice to just get a run out with Pokemon that I hadn't used a lot. There's one thing you'll probably notice in a lot of my teams prior to this, that Cinderace only really came once, and that was against Huggy Bear. That's something else that I didn't really get a lot of value out of in this draft. I never really used Cinderace all that much. I didn't actually realize this until I'm looking at the teams now. So that's a Pokemon I definitely might want to try and draft again, just to see if I can get value out of it and see, like, or learn how to use it properly, because I really did not use this very well. I barely used it at all, in fact, so definitely want to get more mileage out of Cinderace in the future. But with that, we moved into 5th seed of playoffs, so definitely an interesting situation here. Of course, we ended up facing Matt Flame, who was the only player in the league we didn't face because Don faced him in Week 2. So this matchup was super fascinating. Matt had a pretty good team. A team that, if it was prepared well, could definitely cause me some problems. But of all of the Rhyperior, Cinderace, Raikou, Politoed, Tapu Lele, Porygon 2, not a single one of those Pokemon was Scarfed. I think he needed a Scarf Lele. I don't think the Politoed was Scarfed. The Politoed actually ended up not coming out in the match at all. He brought the other 5 Pokemon. But this game was super fascinating because with the team that he brought, he had Weakness Policy Rhyperior, but he never maxed it, which was kind of interesting. Usually when you run Policy Rhyperior, you kind of want to max it, so you guarantee to live a hit. Unless it's a special Water or Grass move hitting you. But instead, he opted just to keep maxing his Cinderace, which, don't get me wrong, if it's your favorite Pokemon, I completely understand that. But yeah, this was where inexperience kind of showed for Matt, because Matt had a very, very good season throughout. He definitely had some great matches. You know, my highlight of the season, honestly, for everybody else, was Matt's win against Saiyan in Week 7. So Matt is very capable, but one problem that he had on his team was that he really did not have an answer for this Ferrothorn. And the reason why is I was fully Spadef. Now, of the mons he bought, Rhyperior gets a fire and fighting move. Cinderace obviously gets fire and fighting moves. Raikou gets a fighting move. Gets Aura Sphere. Politoed gets Focus Blast. Tapu Lele gets Focus Blast. I think P2 is the only one that doesn't get a fighting move, if I remember right. It might actually get Focus Blast, but I'm not sure. I've never seen it run one, for example. But yeah, he had a lot of Pokemon that could actually have fire and fighting moves for this Ferrothorn, but the Rhyperior and Cinderace were the only ones that had it. But the issue with that, of course, is that there is an Urshifu staring down the barrel, and it's Choice Scarfed. Of course, Scarfed Urshifu seemed to be something I brought a lot, because Scarfed Surgeon Strikes actually, does a lot of damage against this team, so definitely a very interesting one. Had a bit of fun with the names, but it was nice to kind of get the opportunity to bring 2 entirely different game plans and beat Matt with them. Because it kind of showed that this team has a lot of versatility, and it makes it very scary to play against. Matt did talk to me, actually, after the game in the comment section of the video of our match, that he did actually have Aura Sphere on the Raikou originally, but he took it off in favor of Thunder. But I think Shadow Ball was the most redundant move on his team, because the only thing Shadow Ball hits for super effective damage on my team is Drakloak. And it's not really gonna matter because Drakloak didn't really have a place in this match, in my opinion. It's outsped by Cinderace, for example. So it didn't really feel compelling. But yeah, definitely interesting. This match was definitely a masterclass in how to prep very efficiently, and also how not all win condition is offensive. You know, Ferrothorn was a phenomenal defensive win condition because it basically walled the Tapu Lele. It had no moves to hit it for non-resisted damage. You know, Raiko's only non-resisted hit was Shadow Ball, which doesn't do a lot of damage because I was fully specially defensive. So there's a lot of things that went wrong for Matt this game, but Matt coming back next season will be scary, no doubt. Like, if he learns how to team build and learn how to optimize his matchup against his opponents, he's going to be very hard to play against. He's a very strong player at his best. And then comes the semi-final against Rhycoustic, the reason why I didn't show my hand very early on. So, Rhycoustic changed his team a fair bit. For his matchup against me, only the Dragapult, the Thundurus, and the Togekiss came from the previous game. And then he brought in Colossal, Lucario, and Crocodile over the Spectria, which he dropped. Fletchinder and Pikachu obviously were not really that good in the merge. This was a really unfortunate match for Rhycoustic because neither him or I had a lot of prep time in the game. Unfortunately, I was unwell and he was busy with work, so neither one of us had a lot of time to prep, so it was definitely hard for him, but this was an absolute stomp. If you watched the YouTube video for this, this was one of the fastest series I've had in a while. He just didn't really have an answer, especially for Weavile. This Weavile set is something I didn't bring that much all season, but Banded Weavile, low-key, is actually really good. Because of its natural speed tier, you don't have to rely on Ice Shard, but it's nice to have Ice Shard there, as it can pick off priority users. Because of the way speed priority moves work, the faster Pokemon with the same priority move goes first. With Weavile being 125 base speed, there's not many Prankstamons that outspeed that. In fact, I can't think of a Prankstamon that does outspeed that, so it definitely makes things interesting. Obviously, things like Scarf Rillaboom with Grassy Glide would outspeed, but Grassy Glide does not kill Weavile, so that was something to bear in mind. But yeah, we definitely had some fun with this. Triple Axel was a very solid bring. It just murders a lot of his team when it needed to. But yeah, this was definitely a fun matchup for me. This was a good opportunity to test out some different sets because I never bought Banded Weavile until this point, so pretty interesting to build it. And then, of course, comes the final, which, for those of you who haven't watched it, it literally is uploaded yesterday. This was a very disappointing game from my end. Like, Ben made a lot of changes to his team, which I really hoped he didn't make. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of knew Primarina was gonna come, which is why I brought in Ferrothorn in the first place. But I didn't really expect Duraludon, and I did not prep for Duraludon at all. My prep for Duraludon, honestly, is like Max Knuckle and Close Combat from my Urshifu Zeraora combination, but the problem with that is because my Urshifu is Scarfed, I ran it to outspeed the Aerodactyl. What I should have done with my prep, which I didn't do, was run enough speed on my Zeraora to outspeed the Scarf Urshifu that outspeeds the Aerodactyl. And then what this would have allowed me to do is Max Knuckle into the Duraludon, and then Close Combat should have killed the Duraludon dependent on his EV spread. So that's what I should have done, but I didn't, so that was poor prep on my part. So unlike a lot of my previous games where my prep was better than my opponents, on this occasion I don't think I prepped particularly well. Ferrothorn was actually a good bring against the Primarina, obviously running the rather fun little tech move, which I did run in the past with the Acid Spray, along with the Leech Seed Protect combination. It definitely did come into play for a little while. It allowed for a decent run, but it just wasn't enough to deal with the Primarina, and that was kind of the big problem I had, is I could not deal with all the offensive tools that Ben threw at me, which is my own fault. I did not prepare this particularly well. So it's a bit of a disappointing end to the season, but I'm not going to lie, to make the finals of a VGC League, when I'm not super experienced in the format, I'm still happy with that result. So I do look forward to RBL Season 2. I will be playing it, so you can definitely count on that. And of course, I'd love to get my revenge on Ben. I would love to actually beat Ben for once. So that'll be fun. But yeah, that's been my RBL season. I haven't done a breakdown video this long in a while. But yeah, I really enjoyed this team. I think big pointers I need to learn. I need to kind of diversify my damage output, so I have a better balance of physical and special. I didn't really do that. I think my defensive core is fine. So if I can pick up a couple of these defensive ones again, I probably will. I might in future draft regular Wheezing instead, well, regular Cantonian Wheezing instead of Galarian Wheezing in this draft, so I didn't have the steel weakness. But yeah. So there are some things that I can definitely do with this. There's definitely some good points that I can take from the season. But yeah, I joined this league to have a bit of fun. I did not quite expect to make the final, so I'm actually very happy that I got there. So yeah, that's going to be it for the RBL postseason roundup. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Ribombees Teacher. I'm your coach of the Royal Bournemouth Ribombees. Stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.